Welcome back, everyone. So today's video is about how to deal with toxic people. Some of you may need some really sound advice on this, and some of you might be going through this right now. So I thought this would be a really good idea, especially for my audience, which is a lot of teenagers or some of my students. It's like, how do you really deal with these people, especially if you're graduating and you have a toxic friend right now, and maybe they want to maintain that friendship outside of high school. It's like, well, maybe you want to separate away from them, and here's a little essay on that. Okay, so this is from a segment that I'm going to start doing just about Robert Greene's books. This is Law 10 from Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Law 10 states infection, avoid the unlucky and unhappy. So let's start going into that and see what we're talking about here. So Robert Greene reminds us that we are affected by the chaos and the emotions of the people around us, right? And we tend to sometimes, when we hear other people's problems, we're like, yeah, that's that person's problems. But pay attention to when you hang out with certain people. Do they give you energy? Do you feel energetic and enthusiastic after you hang out with them? Or do you feel very drained, like, oh my God, I got to take a nap, right? These things are real, right? And the people who, when, after you hang out with them, you feel like, oh my God, I got to take a nap. Like, we call those energy vampires. It's like those people you want to avoid. Right, so the misery and misfortune of your associates, whoever you're friends with, whoever you hang out with, it can fall onto you if you do not cut ties, right? I mean, right now I'm currently going through that as well with a friendship, and learning how to manage and deal with that myself, but also through teaching you, hopefully I can do it better in my own life as well. So let's continue on. And continuing here, so sometimes we encounter and become friends with people who are constantly unhappy. It's like, no matter what happened in your life, like, maybe your dog got run over, they'll come up to you and say, oh, listen, you got to understand, like, my life is just so much worse. Like, you just don't even understand. Like, I didn't even have a dog. Okay, at least you had a dog. So what? It got run over. Right? These people are constantly unhappy. They're just unsatisfied with life and they're complaining. These are the people you want to avoid, right? Now, the first step, obviously, is you just want to become aware of certain people, and you want to look at actions and words, right? Because both are incredibly toxic, and we'll get a little bit to that later on. Okay, so stick around. Okay, you may be tempted to help them and to fix their problems. Just understand that it's more likely you who's going to end up with more problems than you know how to deal with than your friend who's going to solve their problems, right? Keep in mind, and we'll talk about this more in the next slide, that this is really about people who bring this misery onto themselves. This is not like, this is not like, your friend who got into some just very regular trouble, right? Maybe they got into a car crash, or like maybe they lost 20 bucks, or, maybe they failed a test. Like, we're not talking about that. I'm talking about people who bring problems onto themselves, okay? And this slide really focuses on that, right? We're focusing on avoiding the people who bring misfortune, problems, unlucky, unhappy, complaining, whiny, woe is me kind of mentality. Like, you want to avoid these people in your life. The more of these people you can avoid in your life, honestly, the better you will feel. And on the flip side, like, if you're that person, maybe one day I'll make a video for you. We'll see. But if you're that person, I would say practice gratitude, right? Take measure in your life, like what is good and what is worth being grateful for. So the phrase, it's cliche, but misery loves company. It's a cliche for a reason. People can make fun of that phrase all they want, but the reality is, especially as a teacher, I notice this. Like, there are students and people who are miserable, and the miserable ones, they just love one another. Why? Because they're always, wallowing in their own misery, and they get to feel good. And some friends of mine, they're like, or a friend of mine is dealing with a toxic relationship, and I've been telling my friend who is helping this girl get out of that relationship that, hey, listen, like, maybe, so girl A is my friend, girl B is the one in the toxic relationship, and I tell my friend girl A, like, hey, maybe girl B simply likes having someone to listen to her and to whine to this problem about and being heard, and because of her childhood and whatnot. Like, maybe girl B just appreciates that because it makes her feel loved and she wants that motherly or fatherly affection. And she's just never going to do anything. I mean, my friend girl A has been talking to girl B about breaking up and ending this relationship for a year. 1 year, toxic relationship. You don't want to be around these people because they'll spend 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, maybe every week, maybe every other day, maybe once a month, draining your time, your energy, just vampire sucking your energy from you. And at the end of it, they do nothing. They enjoy being miserable. Like, being miserable is their bread and butter, because when they're miserable, people will listen to them for as long as they'll allow it, right? And so that's what this presentation is about. We'll get to those steps at the end later on. And this rule works in its opposite as well, right? So let's say you have 3, 4, 5 friends who are, very positive traits. They're enthusiastic, they're forward-minded, they're goal-oriented, they're hardworking, they don't complain, they make things happen. Like, those are the people you want to be around. Now, if you're just your general average person, you're not too negative, not too positive. If you're around these people who are very positive, you will slowly start to become like them. You'll see what they're doing right, and you'll start to emulate that behavior, and that's what you want, right? You can be infected by positive qualities as well. Sorry, there's a fly just hit my screen here. Okay, so into this next section. So, tips for dealing with the unlucky and unhappy, because it's not enough to just read you some of Robert Greene's work. I also want to give you my advice as well, and hopefully you can leave this video with some good tips on how to deal with toxic people. Okay, I'm going to see if I can lower my camera here. There we go. Okay, awesome. So you can see all the words here. So, dealing with them on the front end. So here's where we split their words and their actions. So, if you have people in your life and you're wondering, like, okay, is this person negative all the time? Are they pessimistic? Like, are they always Debbie Downers, or whatever they have, whatever phrase for people who are down all the time? Are they constantly complaining? I have a friend who, no matter what I tell this person, it's like, I promise you, his life and his problems are so much worse than mine, right? Are they toxic? Do they just create problems? Do they create drama? Do they create issues for everyone, for you? Do they enjoy drama, right? Because there are people who enjoy drama, and you want to avoid those people, especially if you're looking into getting into a relationship with someone who creates drama and likes it. Like, you don't want that relationship. Do they constantly criticize you? Right, and I'm not talking about, like, and students do this with me all the time. They'll point out what they don't do and don't like about my hair, my outfit, my glasses. Geez, I could sneeze, and they'll tell me what they think about that. And I'll deal with that on my own. But I'm talking about just criticism, right? Not even constructive, of like, hey, like, because I have some students who come in, like I had one today, this morning, the day of recording this, and they kind of took a look at me and were like, "You look better with the contact lenses in." It's like, "Oh, thank you," right? Now, if they said, "Hey, man, like, you got to get new glasses because these frames just don't fit your face," that's constructive criticism, and you want to take that with a grain of salt, because unless you really know that this person's being constructive, like they want you to improve, right? So you'll need to learn how to manage this criticism aspect. And do they constantly one up you? I have a friend who does this as well. It's very annoying. It's like, hey, I present a problem. Oh, but Najib, believe me, like, the thing I went through, dude, it's so much worse. Like, you don't even understand. And I'm exaggerating a bit, but you really got to pay attention, listen very closely when you're dealing with people's words. It's like, and you want to look out for some of the things that we just mentioned. And if, their words are negative, like, maybe you want to avoid these people. You probably want to avoid these people. Let's look a bit at their actions. So, maybe, well, some of you are very young, but by the time you get to your 20s, 25s, 30s, we all know that, like, 3 hour long heartfelt advice session. You give these people tips on what they can do to, like, improve their life. You got to ask yourself, do these people actually take any action in their life? So if you tell them, like, hey, break up with that guy or girl, like, just end that relationship, are they actually doing anything about it, or did they just enjoy the misery, the drama, and the attention that comes from that? Are they overly lazy? Again, it's like, hey, the world sucks. Capitalism is bad. I can't get a job. Me, right? Well, have you actually gone out and made a decent resume? Have you learned how to do that? Have you applied to any jobs? Did you apply to one job or 100? Because if you can't get a job from 100, it's like, I have some sympathy. At least you tried applying to 100 jobs. Maybe then you need to readjust your game plan, fix up your resume, whatever it is, right? But at least you're taking action, right? But people who are just overly lazy, it's like their actions, it's like their problems are created because they simply won't strive towards a solution. It's like, oh man, house is always messy. It's like, well, when was the last time you cleaned it, right? Other actions, like, are they just unhelpful? Like, there are students and people, it's like they mean well, but they just create problems. And it's like, hey, actually, it'd be better if you weren't around because like you don't know how to deal with these situations. Like your help is actually creating more problems. And I'm being very abstract on these, and but you want to manage both actions and words, right? Because some people are toxic with their words, some people are toxic with their actions, and those real lovely people who are toxic with both, you just want to avoid and get the hell away from them, like as fast as you can, kids. Let's go to the next slide here. Let me see if I can move my camera thing up. Oh, look at that. Okay, so now you can read all the words on your own as well. So dealing with them on the back end. So let's say, especially this happens at a high school, right? Because you've been forced together in this weird environment with these people that you may not get along with and like. And then eventually it's just like, since we've seen each other every single day for like 3 years or 7 years for some of my students or whatever it is, and you're just kind of stuck. It's like, okay, so dealing with these people on the back end, like you're already in some sort of friendship or entanglement, as the Smiths would call it. Learn to say no, right? Develop your boundaries. It's like, hey, you know what? Like, I actually don't want to hang out. Simple as that. Like, and watch my personality lecture as well because I talk about assertiveness and agreeableness, right? Like, gain some disagreeableness. Like, tell these people no. Like, I don't want to hang out with you, and simply because it's better to state and deal this on the front end than to just avoid. Don't ghost people, right? Because then they'll like, I don't know, it can come back to haunt you, right? But just tell people very clearly and just state for the fact, like, okay, like I don't want to hang out with you. Now, if they start pushing you, like, hey, why don't you want to hang out? Okay, state with clarity why it is you do not want to hang out with them. Okay, so I had to do this with a friend. Like, I admittedly, like, I ghosted this guy because he just had some issues, and I'm not going to go into that. But my friend here who's in a lot of my other videos, my friend Trent, he was telling me one day, like, hey, Najib, like, you should just tell this guy exactly what you told me. Because I told my friend Trent, like, why I didn't want to hang out with him. And, just send him an email because this guy had literally gone from, like, texting me to emailing my personal account and my student account. And, like, it was just a problem. And so, a couple months ago, I sent him a message. I said, hey, listen, dude, like, the last time we were hanging out, this is what I saw, this is what I was observing, and this is what bothered me. I mean, it got to the point, like, there was something that made me very uncomfortable, which was, like, he was kind of being abusive towards his cat, which is, like, very disturbing. And it's like, no, I'm not cool with that, right? Like, and so I laid out in an email very clearly why I didn't want to hang out with him in the last few months. And I told him, like, hey, listen, until you fix yourself, like, I don't want to be around you, right? I got my own thing going on. I can't deal with your problems, right? And so I just put that out there, and I told him, like, you fix yourself when you're ready. Like, I'm 100% ready to continue this friendship. Okay, but recognize that they may never be willing to change, right? Especially like the textbook example of people for this rule or this law. Like, there are those people out there that simply love being miserable. Like, it's their bread and butter. Like, it's what gets them out of bed in the morning. Surprisingly enough, right? Understand that they may never be willing to change. And so, a lot of advice I give dealing with people from my mosque with this whole stating your opinion of why you don't want to go, be careful, right? Like, don't give. So my cousin struggles with this. The mosque people harass this guy all the time to come to events. Why? Well, because when he tells them I don't want to come, he makes some weird, crappy excuse like, oh, like I don't have time, and they'll hit him back with, oh, brother, you got to make time for the mosque. You got to make time for God. Oh, like, I'm just busy with my business. Hey, brother, like, if you dedicate time to God, God will pay you back in your business. And I'm not saying that that's wrong, right? Because I'm very religious, but what I'm saying is, like, if you give people these weak shill arguments, like, they will try to attack them, especially the more parasitical people, right? But if you simply state, hey, listen, I didn't enjoy hanging out with you, and I don't want to do it again. Period. That ends that. So the people at the mosque, like, they asked me once, hey, Najib, do you want to go to this event? And I say no. N-O. Period. I don't even add a period sometimes. I just say no, I'm good. I'm okay, thank you. And part of that might be because, they're all worried, like, okay, like, if we push Najib too hard, is he going to disappear again? And maybe I'll make a video on that one day, on my own personal hero journey. But just state with clarity, and don't give these weak reasons. If you don't want to hang out with someone, just say simply, hey, man, I just don't want to hang out with you. I don't enjoy it. End of discussion. I'm not debating this. I don't enjoy it, and I'm 50% of the hangout session if it's a one-on-one. Next one, my friend Trent tells this to me all the time. It's like with the more toxic people in my own life, it's like, okay, well, fill up your own schedule. If you're busy hanging out with people you want to be hanging out with, right? And the people you want to hang out with are going to be busy. And so you're going to have to go stick your neck out and, ask these people, like, hey, like, let's schedule time to hang out. But busy yourself with things that you want to do and people you want to be seeing. So, the next time this toxic person says, hey, let's hang out, it's like, well, I'm actually busy, and they might get upset, right? But like then again, what do you want to deal with? Them being upset or them being toxic while you're hanging out, right? Like you really got to ask yourself, what are your priorities, right? And eventually they'll move on, or you will, right? My friend Trent suggested this last bit. So continue to learn and grow, right? The thing about new ideas is they deter stagnant people, right? So, um, even with my hair, like I'm trying to grow it out and I like shoulder length hair, and we'll see how that goes. But I remember with that particular friend that I'm referring to, it was like this one day we were about to go out just on a Friday night, and he essentially told me, "Hey, get a haircut because that Bob Ross thing ain't working out for you." Now, you can laugh at that if you want because it is kind of funny. I have very curly hair and I have pretty much like an afro because my hair is long enough. The interesting thing is, it's like, is that someone I want to associate with simply because and maybe one day I'll start giving more advice on relationships. But it's like, okay, well, your hair doesn't matter as much as kind of your confident approach, right? It's like, are you worried about the band-aids or are you worried about the actual wound, right? If you got this big old gash in you and it's bleeding, it's like, oh, well, we'll just put a band-aid on it. It's like, well, no, you should probably stitch it up, right? And I say that to say that if you really resolved yourself on your internal game, it's like that's better for you in relationship and like let's say um, when you're sorry, there's a fly here, like in my head. That's not going to get edited out. If you're in the situation where someone's basically like being a Debbie Downer right before you go out, like, dude, it's 3 hours before we go out. I'm definitely not getting a haircut, and you're going to tell me right now that I look like trash. Like, okay, well, I don't really feel like going out, and if I do go out, I'm not going to have the same energy and enthusiasm. So what are you really doing here, right? Um, so the thing is, what I was getting on about, like new ideas, learning and growing, it's like, okay, like I'm trying to do something new with my hair. That guy is not. And that new idea tends to deter stagnant people and it exposes them for who they are, right? Like maybe you're trying to dress better as well, or maybe you're doing a skincare routine because you want better skin and whatever it is, maybe you're working out. Like people are going to attack you for your new ideas, and this is to your benefit, right? Because you can cut them out of your life for such reasons, and it's even better. It's like, hey, I could have just responded, hey, bro, I didn't appreciate the way you spoke to me about that. And if that's how you're gonna be in this friendship, like I just don't see this friendship going anywhere from here. Bada bing, bada boom. One less toxic person in my life. Um, excuse me. That's also not gonna get edited out. And I learned from my previous mistake of the cough in that video that my students found very funny. Uh, this is just comical at this point. Um, Hence why I don't have a headset and I'm speaking right to my computer's microphone so that doesn't blast through the audio. Okay, so again, continue to learn and grow as a person, because as you learn and grow, you just leave people behind, and like honestly, growth really deters a lot of people. And again, you might be thinking, Mr. Quadra, that's terrible advice. Like I want to keep my friends. You want to keep good friends, right? And you want to have friends that are moving into places that you want to be in life, right? You don't want the same old high school, junior high crew that's, doing drugs in the basement and sitting around playing video games and just not moving anywhere in life. Like, that's not what you want. You want people who are forward minded, right? So if you're growing and you're letting go of these old relationships that are stagnant, these people aren't changing. They're unhappy, unlucky, and they're constantly struggling with the same issues over and over again. Those are the people you want to deal with. Okay, forgot to put in an end slide, so this is it. Hope you enjoyed. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about this video, and if you thought it was valuable, share it with your friends. Okay, have a good day. Take care.